Morning, guys. How are you
Morning.
doing?
All
Right.
right, thank you.
Good.
Thanks for agreeing to do this. It's really great. For anyone who doesn't know, this is Fred and Rachel Heaton. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves to start off with?
Girls go first.
um, I'm Rachel, and we have got two grown-up children, Matthew and Kirsty. Matthew is in the church. He's got two boys, Nathaniel and Johnny, and Kirsty goes to another church. She lives towards Derby. We've been married 40 years, and yeah.
Matthew is married to Abby.
Matthew's married to Abby, yes.
Wow, 40 years. That's quite an achievement.
Yes,
well done, guys.
especially in lockdown.
Yes. I guess you guys are spending quite a lot of time together.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Fred, is there anything you wanted to add to that as to who you guys are?
Well, I'm a professional engineer by trade. That's I was in a time that is so different from today. In the days that I was born, it was make, do, and mend. It was straight after the war. I've still got an identity card.
Wow.
We there was still food rationing when I was a baby. And when you grew up, you did what your dad did. And so my dad worked in engineering, so that's what I grew up to know.
How long have you been doing that now?
55 years, perhaps. Yeah, 55 years.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think I know very many people who I could say have been doing the same job for even, I don't know, half that time.
It's not the same job, it's the same engineering industry.
Okay.
I have moved around in different parts of it, but engineering is a huge topic and you can't know it all.
It's good to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. And so why don't you tell us, how did you come to know Jesus? Who's going to start with that one?
Me. I was born in Nigeria, and I lived there for my first 9 years. So my parents were missionaries. So basically, I was steeped in Christianity right from the start. And I don't think I ever doubted God or that he exists or that he was part of my life. I was about 6 when my dad used to go off on trek out into the bush, and my mum would stay with us children. And when he went away, she used to let us take it in turns to sleep in her bed with her. And I must have been about 6. She was putting me to bed, and I asked her if I was going to heaven, and she kindly said no. Not unless I'd asked Jesus into my heart. So in utter panic, I was thinking I was going to get left behind, and all the rest of my family would disappear one day. So she said, you need to pray this prayer and ask God to forgive you. I asked her to do it for me. She said, no, you've got to do it yourself. So that was the point. I asked Jesus into my heart. I don't think I changed. All I can think is that I knew now that I wouldn't be left behind. That was the only difference there was in my life at that.
Was there a further point later on when you needed to do that again?
I think as I grew, I think I just understood more. We came back to this country and it was highly traumatic for me, and I didn't cope very well. So I turned more and more to Jesus, basically, because he was the only friend I had. So that's how it developed then. I got baptized when I was about 12 or 13. Um, but it's just been a gradual growing to know Jesus better. but he's always been there for me, always, all my life.
That's really lovely. I think a lot of people who grew up in Christian homes will be able to relate to that story. Yeah. What about you, Fred?
Well, I didn't grow up in a Christian family at all. My mum and dad certainly weren't professing Christians, although I think everybody from that age group would have had some relationship with church. So my dad came from Liverpool, and he would often go on about the Catholics and the Protestants in Liverpool. And he was clearly from the Protestant side, but I don't think he ever went to church. My mother came from Plymouth, and she was obviously, because I only found out later, Catholic.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so you've got a Catholic marrying a non-Catholic, but I don't think either of them really went to church or were committed. And they were in the war, of course, so they met in the war or at the end, during the war, got married at the end of the war. And I discovered that when I was about 12 or 13, or maybe 14, that I'd been christened in the Catholic Church in Walsall.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
No, not me. I was born in Walsall, been in Walsall all my life, never been anywhere else really. But I didn't know until then that I was actually christened a Catholic.
Wow.
But never went to a Catholic church other than the day I got christened, I guess. But when I was 4 years old, my mother took me, well, we moved house from the centre of Walsall out to Rushall. And when I was 4, I was taken to the Sunday school in Rushall, which was Brethren Church,
Okay.
Rushall Gospel Hall, which just happened to have been built by
My dad. Just after the war.
That's so
this
cool.
and this makes you think that God had things planned long before we even were born, because he built that church before I was born,
Yeah.
and before she was born. So
he used to carry, it was made out of wood, and he used to carry the wood, which was excess wood from the army, from a sawmill over in Erdington, on his push bike, planks of wood on his push bike.
Amazing.
So I can.
Is that how you guys met? I am just going to adjust
No,
myself
no.
slightly. Oliver's camera has done something very strange, and I don't know how to fix it. So I'm just going to.
No, we never met at the Gospel Hall at all, ever.
Oh wow, okay.
Because she was born in Nigeria, didn't come back to the UK till she was 9. By that time, I was 14 or 15, probably. And
I think you remember me actually coming and seeing me because my dad, but we didn't.
We never met.
We never met.
No. And yeah, I was taken there when I was 4, and so I was in the Sunday school learning the Bible stories with flannel graphs and various other modern technology at that time. And we had some Sunday school teachers, and we worked our way through the Sunday school from 4 right the way up to the Bible class when I was sort of 14, 15, 16. And when you got to the Bible class, there was nowhere else to go. You just stayed in the Bible class. And being a Brethren church, they sort of hadn't got anything much more to offer you once you got to the Bible class. So as I got older, started work, tended to slip away because there was nothing to attract me back to the Bible school. I believed all the time The Bible says, bring up a child in the way he should go and he won't depart from it. Well, it obviously works. I've always believed that there was God from the day I first joined the Sunday school, really.
So what
And-
brought you back? What made
Oh,
you
well,
really commit?
It was when I got to 16, obviously I started work and became an apprentice. And you meet lots of people in the world then that you haven't met before. Up till then, you only met people at school, and now you start to meet the world real. And never doubted that there was a God, but there was nothing to excite me to go back to the gospel hall. And of course, then university comes along as well. And I was off to university, determined to join the Christian Society, but never seemed to have time. Engineers, the studying regime is huge. You don't have time to play. And so I never really got a chance to get into that then. So I was really looking for something, but I could tell that I was drifting away, really. And I didn't like what I was becoming. I could see myself being tainted by the world, and eventually called out to God and said, that if you exist, which I'm sure you do, you must, you've got to do something. And he did. He answered.
In a specific way, or?
Yeah, maybe. He told me to go back to the gospel hall. He'd give me the desires of my heart.
Great.
So I did. I went back, and when I got there, it wasn't a gospel hall anymore. It was a spirit-filled church, and there was guitars playing and all kinds of things going on that I'd never met before.
Oh wow! Okay.
Mm.
And so you have to tell us how did you meet?
So how did we meet?
Yeah.
Well, we met at night when I went back to the church.
Okay. Totally
I
worth
didn't
going
think
back then.
I didn't think anything of him. God told him that I was going to be his wife, but he didn't tell me that.
Oh no. When did you cotton on?
2 or 3 months later, I guess. He asked me to go to a so there was somebody in the church that kept on pointing me towards him, and I kept thinking, I'm not going to be pushed anywhere. So to wind this person up, I decided on the Sunday when I came into one Sunday night meeting that I would sit by him just to set the tongues wagging. And then he had been praying that I would sit, if I sat by him, he would ask me to go for a Christmas dinner, work dinner. So basically, he did, and that's how it started.
Fantastic. God works in mysterious ways and through all of our stubbornness. So why WCC? How did you end up with us?
The church building that we were in at this point in time actually belonged to the Brethren, and they didn't like the fact that it was being used in a charismatic way. So we had to give the building up. So at that point, everybody scattered to different places. Some went to Aldridge Parish. We went to another church, which lasted a year or so, and then the pastor ran off. And then we went and met with Steve and Jill, who Steve's my brother, who are meeting in the Royal Hotel in Warsaw. And then we were trying to discuss here beforehand why that sort of finished, and we don't know, I can't remember. So we went to Sutton Baptist to look for a church, went there a few weeks, and then Shirley and Mike had gone to Vic's church at that point in time, which was on Barbican, and they invited us to go there, and we never went anywhere else after that. That was about 35 years ago.
What do you think it was about that church that
Yeah.
kept you in, that drew you in?
If you want, well, you asked the question why WCC. I'll tell you, Vic Gledhill. That's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
And that's why we're still here today.
He basically, the first Sunday we were there, he came and talked to us, welcomed us in, invited us to his daughter's 21st birthday.
And he
didn't even know us. And when we sort of said that, we'd been battered a bit through the things that had happened through various churches, he said, come and just rest and be refreshed. And that's how he welcomed us into the church.
Yeah.
So we never left.
Yeah. Yeah, we love Vic. And he has been the one person. I mean, there's many people in the church that have been good to us and that we've been friends with, but I'll say Vic is the one person that has always supported me totally through prayer and encouragement in business. So all the time I've been in business, Vic's prayers have been behind me, supporting me. He comes down to the factory, meets the people, he's interested in what's going on, and he prays powerfully into the things that the business is doing, and we see God answering prayer specifically, because Vic prays very specifically for things, and I've seen doors open in the business realm because of Vic's prayers.
That's so wonderful to hear how church can support you in all areas of life, and yeah, that's really lovely. So that kind of takes us on to the next part, in terms of I was going to ask you, Fred, I know you've worked in business a long time, and I just wondered if you could tell us a bit about what that's been like. How have you walked with God in that world?
Well, it's no different to walking with God in your life. Christianity is the bedrock and the foundation on which you build your life, and you build your life on the Word of God and on Christ Himself, on Jesus, on His life and His ways and His teaching, and you weave that into your life. Your life stands on it, or it's the same in business. There's no difference really. You do exactly the same things as you do in your life. You make your decisions based on what the Bible teaches. I can tell you now that if somebody desires to go into business, just being a Christian will not make it successful. Not at all. You've got to know what you're doing as well. But if you have the what you call the knowledge and the wisdom, which comes from knowing God, of course. One of my favorite books in the Bible is Proverbs, and there's lots of proverbs about wisdom and understanding and knowledge, which will help you if you want to run a business. If you don't know what you're doing in business, I've had just being a Christian doesn't help. But if you do, then being a Christian and applying Christian principles to the way you run the business will help enormously. And of course, unless God's involved in the building of something, it's not likely, may not succeed. Although I'm sure there's plenty of businesses that do succeed that don't have Christians in it.
Can you tell us a little bit about how did you apply those principles to your business?
Well, just simple terms. Follow what the Bible says. Walk justly. Have mercy. Walk humbly with God. The Bible tells you not to withhold the workman's wages. So I never do. I always pay people promptly In fact, quicker than most people. So from day one, I always pay all suppliers to the companies that I've managed as soon as possible. Now that in business terms is stupid, because you're giving away cash, and cash is the lifeblood of any company. And most people hang on to cash and try to pay people as late as possible, whilst they get paid by their customers before they have to pay their suppliers. And therefore they're running their business on the cash flow from their suppliers, and that's wrong. So I took the view, we pay people immediately. And what happened was that immediately you get a very good credit rating, because it doesn't matter who you are dealing with, they're going to give you a good report, because, oh, that's one of our best customers. They always pay, and they pay quick. And so you get a good reputation from that. And then on top of that, you start to be able to say to people, well, I need this a bit quick. If you need some help, they're going to help you, because they know they're going to get paid as soon as they deliver the goods. So it gave us the ability to work fast and quicker and supply our products to customers who needed them quick. And our business is all built on working quickly and giving the right service. So by paying people quickly, you could say to them, look, I need you to jump, and they'd say, how high? And you pay them and they're happy. So it gave us a strength. It gave us a good reputation. It gave us a strength, because people didn't want to lose your business. So they'd go to more.
Sounds like God really blessed you.
It did, because in order to do that, you've got to have the cash resource to be able to do it. And that's really, I suppose, where God's hand comes in, because one of my rules also, which again, coming from the Bible, said, you'll lend to many and borrow from none. And so I did that as well. So I borrowed from nobody. I didn't lend to any, I don't think, but I didn't borrow money. And that meant that the business could only grow at a slower pace, because we didn't take on the debt to be able to fund faster growth. But God provided enough cash for us to be able to pay our suppliers quickly and still be successful. So the businesses grew profitably without any debt, and that has to be God's hand.
Yeah, sounds like you really were blessed.
The other thing is that he hasn't said is that he wouldn't give bribes to people who expected a backhand or a gift for giving him the order, for giving him orders. And the other thing is that he never treated the people who were under him as though they were under him. So he didn't just sit in the office. He'd got a really good atmosphere, and he would go and work at the workbench next to the trainee person. And I think people who came were quite shocked about that, because they're used to dirty factories. They're used to lots of rude pictures on the walls, and they're used to the boss locking himself away in his office. And he always worked alongside his people and trusted them, gave them responsibility from early on, so that they knew that they had got responsibility. He never criticized them for mistakes, because he told them they learnt from mistakes. So he did run his business in a very different way to the world would have run it, I think.
It's so lovely to hear someone talk about how God has really impacted what they do on an everyday basis. And I know you said, sorry.
Well, again, it's a biblical principle, isn't it? That you don't lord it over your servants. and Jesus was the servant king. So I've always considered that I'm there to serve the people that work for me. So I would look to see how I could help them to do better. So I would often say to people, "You're doing a great job. How can I even help you to do it better? What are you missing? What do you need? Is there anything we can do to even make it better?"
Amazing. And I know you said you guys had 2 children, and I know, Rachel, you were at home raising those 2 into the beautiful people that they are now. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like being a stay-at-home mum and raising the kids to know God, and how God kind of helped you with that?
All I wanted really was to be a mother, so they were a real blessing to me, and I stayed home. I tried to go back into teaching for a while when they were at school full time, but I didn't like it. So I started minding other people's children here. With my own children, I had to do a lot of it on my own because Fred did a lot of traveling, and there weren't even mobile phones around to keep in contact. And so he was off to Australia twice a year for 6 weeks at a time, and then everywhere, all over the world. So I was on my own a lot. So I guess I found that very difficult, but it was what I expected when I got married. So it wasn't something that I fought against in any way. With the children, bringing them up in the home, I tried. I mean, we all make mistakes, don't we? And we did the best that we can. And we've all got our own ideas. I know how I was brought up, and I didn't want that to be totally how my children were brought up. So I know my children, like Matt, won't bring his children up like we brought him up, because we all have to do it our own way. But I wanted them to be totally immersed in God at home. I didn't want the outside and the world to have them more than it did, because basically they were at school most of the time, came home, had the tea and went to bed, then got up and went to school. So I had them Saturday and Sunday, a couple of hours in the evenings. And I wanted that time to be God time, or that sounds too religious, but I had Christian music playing in the house. I bought them loads of Christian tapes, children's tapes, and we had those playing in the car all the time. I was very strict about programs they watched on the television and how much time they did that. There were no computers to distract, because there were no such thing early on in their age, in their lives. No mobile phones. They went to children clubs at the church. I always said they could go to any party, birthday party they were invited to, but not any on Sunday morning. And I think and they did loads of other stuff. You know, we got involved in, they went horse riding and swimming and all the normal things, and cubs and scat and things. So they did lots of outside stuff as well. But and then every morning we would have a quiet time in Bible time at the table for breakfast before they went to school. And I prayed with them every day. So that's how I brought God into it, really, and survived really through ups and downs in that way, that God was always there to be with me. He had to be, because Fred wasn't there, so I had to turn to him. I mean, even things, I know it sounds silly, but even things like trying to open a jar that won't open, you know, I'd pray about that. A couple of times that did defeat me. I had to go next door and ask him to open a jar for me. But yeah, I mean, so I got used to talking to God about absolutely everything because I had to deal with stuff on my own a lot of the time. Same with a lot of the parent teachers meetings. I'd get most of those I went on my own, so I found that quite difficult. Mostly more difficult in their teenage years. That was really hard. But and there were all the normal things that you have to face with children that sort of, don't want to do their homework, don't want to, they never got into trouble at school for being naughty, but they got into trouble. Well, Matt got into trouble for not doing his homework in secondary school. Kirsty drifted a bit at one point, but then we had quite miraculously a couple that we knew from, they'd come and stayed with us years and years and years ago when the Bible, when the churches that were connected to our churches used to have a international leaders meeting, and we used to put up a lot of people like who came for that, and we put up a couple from Norway, and they kept in touch, and I don't know, God, when both of them were going through a difficult time, different times, God told them to ring us up and invite the children individually to their house.
Wow.
And those were really key turning points, particularly for Kirsty, in getting her back, when she started to drift. She went there, came back, so said, I've got to go to Bible school. I said, well, I didn't want her to go to escape from her life here, as it were. I said, well, if you want to go, you've got to earn the money. We could have paid for her to go. And she went straight. This is when she was at the college. She'd left school. She was at the college in Warsaw. She went out lunchtime, got herself a job and earned her money to go. She was going to another church at that point, got herself baptized and went off to Norway, all because these people listened to God. And I think that's what I prayed for the kids more than anything else, that there would be somebody other than me who would support them and help them when they needed help. And it took this couple from Norway to be those people.
That's so beautiful to hear how God answered your prayers that you've been praying for your kids. Do you have a specific a special memory of God kind of turning situation around for you, or of God kind of intervening when the kids were little, or?
Well, there were loads and loads of times, little things that sort of happened all the time, because I'd be upset and what have you, or struggling, and then I just had God's strength and peace. This business with Kirsty, just out of the blue, that was a very big thing because she'd started going to a pub down in the Butts, which wasn't very nice. She said she was going to play snooker there and that, and wasn't going to church at that point. And then this couple rang up and changed everything out of the blue without being told. They'd gotten absolutely no idea at all. They hadn't been with us for months, maybe years, and they just rang up out of the blue. So that was the big thing. And then little things like when Nathaniel was little and I was pregnant with Kirsty, Fred was away for the last 6 weeks of my pregnancy with Kirsty in Australia, so he couldn't drop everything and come. She was 2 weeks late, fortunately, so he was back.
Oh, good.
So, and when you're sort of coming to the end, it's really stressful and hard work, and you're big and clumsy, emotional and everything. And I was setting Matthew was sitting on the step and I was putting his shoes on, and I just started to cry. And he said, "Mummy, what's the matter? Why are you crying?" I said, "Well, I'm his daddy." He said, "I'm his daddy too." And he started to cry. So I said, "Well, we're going to have to make ourselves better." I said, God says his joy is our strength. And we used to sing a song at the church, "The joy is the Lord is my strength." I said, let's sing that song and let's dance and see if we feel better. So we danced all the way around the hall, singing this song and crying. And, at the end of it, we just fell about laughing because it was so funny. So it was situations like that, really, little situations when you're emotional and things seem big, that God stepped in and helped just to open a jar or to
I love the opening the jar. That's amazing. So what about now? What are you guys up to now? Fred, you've retired and gone back to work from my understanding. What are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, it's a strange thing, really, that society has changed so much in my life, vastly. When I look back on 70 years, 71 now, I look back on those years, so many changes have happened. And one of the things that's happened is that people with silver hair aren't valued so much anymore, are they?
We love you.
Young people today don't take much notice of what the old fellas say. I don't think young people today learn as much as they could from older people. I certainly don't have much interaction with younger people anymore. So I was invited to go and help somebody who's setting up a business. So for the last couple of years, I've helped. But the last year has been wiped out by COVID, really, hasn't it? I mean, what else can you do in a year when you're locked down? We haven't had much chance to do anything at all, have we? It's certainly a year unlike any year I've ever known in my life. I don't suppose there'll be another year like it, but
let's hope not.
Who knows what's going to happen? You just don't know. If COVID goes away and we get released from lockdown, then maybe I'll do something different. But right now, I can help out with the business. Whilst there's nothing else that we can do.
What about you, Rachel? Do you feel like God has kind of been saying anything to you this year, or I know you've been thinking about where you're heading next, kind of thing?
I don't think God has really said to me anything about what I'm supposed to be doing or going to next. I know when I finished work, everything happened at once. I finished childminding, the kids left home, and my mum and dad died. Fred's mum and dad died, all 1 year after another. And suddenly I'm in an empty house because I'm not childminding. I've always worked from home, so I haven't got any outside anything. So during lockdown, it's like going back into that again, shut up in the house. So that is a danger for me because I've got to now force myself to go out again afterwards to get involved in something, because I find that very difficult. But I have used the time to do more Bible studies. And before lockdown, and I was asking God what all this was, doing. God said, I just want, you don't have to do anything. You've been doing and doing and doing, you don't have to do anything. And that for me is quite a big lesson to learn because I've always done work in the church with the looking after, doing the children's work. Ever since I was 13, I've worked with children.
Wow.
So it was quite hard to have nothing. And my value tended to be in what I did rather than who I am. So God said, I just want you to get to know me. So I've been doing lots of Bible studies and things like that. So I don't know what the future has got in store.
That's okay. What a fantastic way to use the year, just to spend time getting to know God. That's great. Oh, well, it has been such a pleasure just talking to you guys and hearing a bit about your lives. And I know that the rest of the church will have enjoyed hearing more about you as well. So thanks ever so much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking us.